Hi and welcome to Cardboard Magic. Today's video is just a short tutorial on basic cardboard modelling, and when I say basic cardboard modelling, I'm talking about your very basic cutting and gluing techniques and using cardboard in general. Some of it you will find fairly basic and some of it you will find very useful. It really depends on your experience with cardboard modelling. So I'll be covering just the main do's and don'ts and the very basics of cutting and using cardboard. Firstly, I'm just going to go through the tools that I use. And as far as I'm concerned, this is really all the tools that you need. So I have the glue gun, a pencil, scissors for cutting, a good Stanley knife for cutting, or what's known across the water or across the pond as a box cutter, a bulldog clip for holding the card together when gluing, a pencil, rubber and ruler for marking, masking tape for holding the card together again when gluing, and just some basic glue for odds and sods here and there. So I'm going to do a very basic overview of the tools and how to use them, and I'll also be talking about the cards and different grades of cards that there are or you might want to use. So the very first thing I want to talk about is the actual blade or cutting tool. I prefer to use a Stanley knife, or what, as I said earlier, is known as a box cutter. This is the type of knife that I prefer to use. One of the reasons being is that I am a tradesperson by day. Well, this is one of the tools that I use on a regular basis anyway. But one of the most important factors with this knife is the blade. The blades are very strong and sharp, and also the blades are very easy to get hold of. They're heavily mass produced, so they're available in most DIY stores. You can just go and pick them up when you run out. And you'll find that when you're cutting a lot of card, you are going to need a sharp blade, and after a while, as with most blades, they will not retain their sharpness. So you'll be needing to replace them so that they do not snag the card as you are cutting it. Now this, as you can see, is a pack of about 100 blades, double-sided blades, and they will cost in the region of about £10 in the UK, so comparatively they're fairly cheap to replace. Now the other cutting tool that I use is scissors, which I don't use nowhere near as much as I do the knife, but sometimes using a pair of scissors is necessary. You can get specialist scissors for cutting cards, but I don't really think they're necessary. Now with the scissors you can make cuts quite easily, but the issue with the scissors is that they will pinch the edges, whereas a knife will make the cut a lot neater, as you can see. So that's cutting tools covered. The next thing we're going to cover is cutting techniques. When cutting card, for the obvious reasons, it's essential that you are cutting safely and correctly. It's a lot easier when pulling either towards you or to the side. If you're cutting away, you have near enough no control. It's extremely ineffective and it will be a bad cut. Whereby if you're pulling towards yourself, you have a lot more strength and your wrists give you a lot more control of the cut. Now you have to do this safely, otherwise you will lose your thumb. So when making a cut, it's very important that you don't go in hard the very first time and cut all the way through. Start gently by using your blade lightly and just cutting through the very first layer. You can see the blade is not going all the way down. I'm just applying slight pressure for the first cut, and then gradually making several cuts to work my way through the card. So you can see it's a very clean and smooth cut, and more importantly, I still have all my fingers. So types of cardboard. You get cardboard that comes in various grades and thicknesses. You can see this, it has 2 layers of corrugated cardboard, and then you have another one here which still has 2 layers of card but is slightly thinner. And then you can see this one which has just 1 layer of corrugated paper. So you can work with whatever you want to. The thinner card is obviously a lot easier to bend and shape, and the thicker card is a lot more sturdy. It's really whatever you want to work with, whatever you choose to work with. I myself wouldn't say I have that degree of an expertise to have any preference. When I need card, I generally just go down to the supermarket and just go to the back and have my pick from the empty boxes. They usually allow me to do that. I generally just find the best card that I need and bring it home and start working with. So pencils, I generally tend to work with HB pencils. You get various thicknesses and hardnesses in pencils. The more H's or the higher the H, the more harder the pencil is, or the more B's there are or higher the B, it tends to be softer and leaves a bigger mark. I use HB because it's not too coarse, but it's thick enough to make the mark clearly and I can see it, and at the same time is not so brittle that it doesn't cause a mess when you use a rubber to rub away the marks after you've done the cutting. For someone like me, it's easier to work directly on the card. I tend not to use templates so much, so it's a lot easier for me to use a pencil, make the shapes on the card and then cut away from there, then rubbing off the pencil afterwards. Now when it comes to rulers, it's in my opinion very important to have a metal ruler. You can pick them up in most DIY stores and they're not as expensive as you might think. So it's better to use a metal ruler than it is to use a plastic ruler. My reasons for this is that when you're using a metal ruler, the main benefit is that when you're making a cut, you can put the metal ruler down and hold the blade against it while you're making a cut, and you can actually push against the ruler, keeping that straight line. And that line will be precise depending on how hard you're holding the ruler down. Now in that same scenario, if you were to use a plastic ruler and if you were to use it to score a card in the same way as you did with a metal ruler, the knife as it goes along will start digging into the ruler and making small cuts in it. But because it causes so many dents, after only 2 or 3 times of using it, you'll find that you have a ruler without a straight line. But also from a safety point of view, if you're cutting the card using a plastic ruler, there's a danger that the blade could actually cut into the ruler and then just cut across the plastic into your hand. So for those reasons, I would say try to always avoid using a plastic ruler unless you're using it for marking with a pencil, but with a blade it's a no-no. So masking tape and glue gun. It's important to have masking tape because in a lot of occasions you'll have 2 pieces that you want to hold together and glue, and it's better to have 2 hands free to use the glue gun and hold the card rather than having just one hand with the glue gun and the other hand trying to hold the card in place. And in this example you can see if I make a cut like so, then I can hold it together with the masking tape while I use the glue gun to glue from the inside. And then once the glue has dried, you can pull the masking tape off fairly easily. It tends not to rip the card too much. So one of my most costly tools and important tools is my glue gun, even though comparatively speaking in terms of tools it's not that expensive. I use the Bosch glue gun mainly because in my job all my tools tend to be Bosch, because they're fairly good quality tools, and I'm spending a lot of hours cardboard modeling. I need something that I know is going to be a reliable tool. So all I need is the glue sticks, push them in the back and we carry on. The only one thing I could say to be aware about the glue gun is that the longer you leave it on, the hotter the glue inside gets, so that when you use the glue it takes a lot longer to set. Tip to remember when gluing 2 pieces of card together is this: when applying the glue, apply the glue in such a way so that the outside, that is the display side, remains clean and free of blobs of dried glue. To give you a demonstration of that, let's just say we've got 2 pieces of card and you've got the outer side and the inner side, which I'll mark with pencil. When applying the glue, carefully apply it more towards the inner side of the card than the outer side. So you apply the glue along the edge, and then what you do when gluing the other piece of card is that you start from the outside and push along to the inner side, and you just work your way in like this. What that will do is then push the glue along the edge towards the inside. And then what will happen is in some cases that the glue will be pushed along and in some cases overlap towards the inside. But when the glue overlaps on the inside, it doesn't really matter because it's not the display side, but also it adds an extra layer of glue on the inside as well, helping with the bonding. So then on the outer side, you can see that you have no glue showing at all, and it makes the join look a lot cleaner. Sometimes what you need to do is actually shape the card and bend it and twist it just for the shape of the modeling that you require. And the great thing about using a material like card is that it has that flexibility to do and still retaining a certain amount of stability. So for example, if you want to curve the card, I will just use the ruler to push the card from the inside, allowing me to shape the card more easily. I've seen a video where I will put the links up of it later, whereby somebody is bending cardboard, and what they're doing is applying a very thin layer of water on the outside, just brushing some water on, which allows the card to bend even more easily and more smoothly, and when it dries it's a smoother curve. But you can shape it in all different directions. Here you can see the lines of the corrugated paper going in one direction. Now you may want to bend the card in another way that goes against the shape of the corrugated paper. So in this case here again, I'm using a ruler and making some lines going in a different direction so that I can actually curve the card in a different direction. And this is extremely useful because it helps you shape and bend the card in the direction you want. To use an example, right now I'm making a model of a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and I'm in the process of shaping the jaws. And so let me just show you this. And you can see here's the bottom jaw of the T-Rex. As you can see, to mold the shape the way I want to, I have to push this out slightly. You can literally just use your hands and bend the card and shape it in all sorts of directions. It takes a bit of time and patience, but that is one of the benefits of using card. It's generally good to make stencils using paper because it's easier to shape the paper than it is to shape the cardboard first. This here is a stencil that I made for the shape of a C3PO head a little while ago. So this is the stencil of the shape of the head that I made for this here. This is something that there's no way I could have just done organically the way I normally tend to do. So I had to make a template first using paper, and the way I did it was I just used a model of a head. I put the piece of paper on this ceramic head, I bent and shaped the paper around it, and then made lots of pencil marks, lots of folds, and then pencil marked it, and then made cuts around that, and that eventually gave me the shape of this head. Now stenciling takes a lot of time and effort. It's something that you might be into, but I certainly am not. I tend to work more freehand as I go along. It's just a skill that I seem to be better at. But one thing I would suggest is that if you've just cut out a shape organically, and it's, for example, on this dinosaur's head, the side of the jaw, what I did was I cut the shape out of the cardboard and bent it and shaped it, and that was the one side of it. And then what I did, rather than glue it all up and put it into position, I immediately took that piece and I put it on another piece of card and cut out and used that as a stencil to cut out the other side of the jaw, saving me a lot of time and effort of having to go through the whole process all over again. So as you can see, I cut it and I shaped it and worked on it organically, and then I put it on the other side, and then I cut the stencil exactly for the other side and just glued the two of them together. That I learned the hard way because I've done it once before where I spent a long time and then just glued it all into position, and then I realized I needed to do the other side again as well, and I had to go through the whole process all over again, and it was harder the second time because I was trying to match it, the right side to be parallel to the left side. So stencils, sometimes you have no choice. You can get stencils online as well for certain things. I tend not to use those. I just like to do it myself, and you can see like this for the C3PO head, I had no choice but to make my own stencil. And even here, for example, just the eyebrows, I made a stencil from paper and used that first because it was a lot easier to bend the paper and shape it against what I needed than actually bending and shaping card. Another thing that we need to talk about is cutting into the card to actually shape it. Now sometimes we may need to change the shape of a card, and the type of cut that you put into the card will determine the shape that you're going to get as well. So previously I just showed you a model of the T-Rex that I was making. So if you can imagine, and this is how I did the jaws. So if you can imagine, this is the jaw, and that is the side that when it folds it goes underneath. So here, let me just show you an example. So the edges are pulled in like so, creating this shape. Now with the second piece, you can see that the angle's been cut at a curve. When the two sides are pulled together, it will give it a more curved edge or a more curved shape. This obviously needs a bit more scoring and shaping. So let me just glue the two of these and show you what the different outcomes are. So you can see how the two different pieces have come out in different shapes. Obviously from the inside it's not that pretty, but that doesn't matter. So on this one we have a straight cut, and this is the kind of angle or shape that it's been given. And the second piece has a shape that is a lot more curved. Obviously you will need to bend it and shape it to get the right kind of shape that you want without these straight marks in there. Normally I would spend a lot more time shaping the card so that I get the kind of curve that I want, but this will suffice for the purpose of this video. Another thing that I would recommend when gluing edges is this. Let's say you want these two edges, these two pieces to be glued together at an angle, but not straight, but at two different angles. What I would tend to do is bevel the inside edges to actually help the shape. So I will bevel both sides, both edges, making sure the display side of the paper remains intact, so that when you eventually glue those two pieces together, the outer side, the display side, has a clean joint without any gaps, while still retaining the angle. So I'm going to glue, as I showed previously, the inside edge, and here I'm making sure as I attach the other card that the outside is clean. And so as I've attached two pieces of card at two different angles, this will ensure that there's no seam and that you cannot see a gap in the card. And so you can see here, as the card has been joined, that there's hardly any gap. It's almost seamless. The inside obviously is not as clean, but that doesn't matter. And so that's two pieces of card joined at an angle, and it looks neat and tidy. This other technique that I'm going to show you is joining two pieces of card at a 90-degree angle when you don't want the edges to be seen. You want these two pieces to join and you don't want the corrugated edge to be seen. Now this is a trick that I learned from another YouTuber whose link I will post as well. So I'm taking the smaller piece and lining it up against the edge where I wanted to glue it. I make a pencil mark the same width as the other piece of card, and then what I'm going to do is cut the card very gently from the inside, cutting all the way through gradually and ensuring that the last piece of paper on the display side is not cut through, but everything else is. I just lift out the paper that is cut, and then using a ruler I just scrape away the excess paper on the inside. After removing all the excess paper, I can now glue the other piece of card, and then after applying the glue I can then just join that other piece of card. There you have a nice clean join, a seamless join. You can really only do this with 90-degree angles unless you want to get a lot more creative and work with the card, and card is something that does allow you to do that. Again, as I said, this is something that this is a technique that I learned from another YouTuber whose details I will also be providing. I think that's only fair. And lastly, just a quick tip that you may find useful. You may find that while you're creating your model or whatever, and you may put a bit of masking tape on there, as you remove the masking tape it will pull away some of the card, or maybe even if you're trying to scrape away some excess glue, that may pull away some of the card as well. A trick I use all the time is literally just take the upper peel off a spare piece of card, rip it off, and then just using some basic glue, just glue it on, and it helps make your model look a little neater. Just a small trick that you might find useful or you might not. It's just something that I do a lot because the modeling that I do, I tend to leave it in its cardboard form rather than spraying or resurfacing. So there you have it. That's my very basic tutorial. These are just some of the tricks and techniques that I use for my modeling. If you want to know more, there's a couple of YouTubers that I would recommend. One is called Jude Pullen and the other one is Eric Strebel, whose links I will post. The kind of work that I do are tutorials on making masks from sci-fi movies and models and stuff like that, and that's more what I'm interested in. I just put up this video because I thought that it might be helpful. And as I said, I will give you the links of these other YouTubers whose videos I borrowed from quite heavily, and so I think it's only fair that I do post their links. And those guys are real masters at cardboard cutting and gluing techniques, and you can learn a lot more from them than you can me. So I think it's only fair that I share their links with you as well. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you found it useful. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found it useful, and I hope this video inspires you to make some of your own creations. So if you did like it, please hit the like button and give me a thumbs up. I'd love to know what you think of this tutorial, so please give me your thoughts in the comment section. Even if you think it was rubbish, just let me know, I don't mind. I'd love to make some more videos, so please subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you again soon with another video. Thanks once again.